The Anti-Defamation League is marking 100 years since its founding in Chicago by a group of Jewish leaders who came together to fight bigotry and other forms of anti-Semitism. The ADL's new national chair, Barry Curtiss-Lusher, wants to emphasize that although the world has changed in many ways since 1913, the group's mission remains essentially the same.
At the core, we fight hatred. We fight bigotry, we fight discrimination. And one of the oldest forms of that is anti-Semitism. And we're a Jewish organization, and we're the first line of defense, both in, we hope, doing things to prevent it, and we're very active in schools, we're very active out there in the community in a proactive way, but we're also there as one of the first places to call when there's a hate crime, when there's an incident.
In Europe, we see some outspoken, aggressive forms of anti-Semitism. Here in the U.S., my understanding is that it's not as much of a problem. But are there still pockets of anti-Semitism in the United States?
It's how you define the problem. So ADL has periodically done national polling on anti-Semitism. I think our last one was this past year. We ask a series of questions that all get at an element that we would consider anti-Semitic. Now, we don't consider people who respond to that survey to be an anti-Semite if it's only one question that they answer in that way. I think it's 3 or more that we then classify them that way. Now, in the United States, the people who we classify that way are about 12%. I think the high water mark a number of years ago was 18%. But so 12% is reduced, is not very high, you would say. But 12% of 330 million people is 40 million people.
As the national chair of the ADL, Mr. Curtiss-Lusher spends much of his time in New York and traveling internationally. But his home base is here in Denver with a Jewish community that has more than doubled since he moved here in the late 1970s.
There's both that well-established community that's been here for multi-generations and a lot of new people who have come in just in the last 20 years. And so that creates some interesting dynamics. New thinking, freshness, people willing to take risks and do things.
In your work here in Denver and nationally, what do you see as the biggest challenges?
I think the interrelationship of hate. Somebody who's involved in gay bashing is going to tend to have anti-Semitic tendencies. Somebody who's a racist tends to also be an anti-Semite and a gay basher. And so our coalitions with the LGBT community, with the African American community, with the Latino community is very important to us. And I think that's the challenge is continuing to grow those alliances and be mutually respectful and mutually supportive.
In recent years, the ADL's battle against bigotry has taken on the newest forum for hate crimes, the Internet.
We have a close working relationship now with many of the Internet providers, all the names you'd expect, to work as part of a task force to address how we define hate on the Internet, what you do about it, because we're also a free speech civil rights organization. So we believe in addressing hate speech with more speech, with programs proactively, initiatives to educate people about not only what it is, but what can be done about it.
Whether it comes to cyberbullying or hatred on television, at work, or in the street, Mr. Curtiss-Lusher is bringing a renewed energy to the national and international conversation on ways to combat discrimination against all minorities. I'm Mary McCarthy for JN1 in Denver.